and most of the Central Asians, they speak Russian. And they've also begun to learn Mandarin. And many of them were coming, like I meet them a second time, one of them I happened to be, and she said, no, I come every 7-8 months. So they are cultivating people there, So SEO, I don't know where it will go. And then in the Ukraine war, one of the problems is that it has long been shown as in the course of the war that Russia is losing its hold in Central Asia. And that it could be an opportunity for India. That is also not the case because today, unfortunately, Indian media has not reported it with the detail it should have been, is that China has more or less, Russia has more or less won its way in the Ukraine war. And in the course of the Ukraine war, just like Russia had an understanding with India for the selling of petroleum, they also used this period to create industries and development, imports and exports in all the Central Asian countries because there was no taboo or sanctions on dealing with the Central. Now there is no effort. So for this reason I feel the dynamics of SEO will change, especially now with Iran, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, all these countries becoming members of it. And there is an opinion of among people who know that India could have dealt differently with Iran because Iran has always been a very close friend of India and it is Iran more than any other country that was instrumental in preventing the UN Human Rights Council in 1993 or 4 when Vajpayee went as the leader of the delegation along with Salman Khurshid as the External Affairs Minister and sanctions were threatened against India on human rights in Kashmir. It is Iran which turned the tide. Narasimha Rao had sent Dinesh Singh, who was taken out of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and he went there and met Rafsanjani, the president, who came to the airport and met him there. So this is the kind of relationship we had. And then what do we see? We see our foreign office, the representative goes to Washington, he stands on the steps of this building in White House, and then he says, no, we have got permission to talk to Iran and trade with Iran. So these things will not be forgotten. And I think Chinmay Gare Khan, when the Arab Spring was there, he wrote a piece in which he says, the Arabs have long memories and they will remember who is with them. And Persia is not very different from the Arab world. So I think Iran may not trust us because if you look at that port where we have that agreement, Chabahar, when did we first talk about it? In 2002 when Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. 22 years down the line, what has happened? So SEO cannot be rid of the burden of this history. SEO will be hostage to this one. And there are some who see India as a force that represents Western interests, especially because of the way it is pitted against China. Now there is another interesting thing which had real possibilities, which people like Patricia Oberoi, they say in this whole Belt and Road initiative, what has suffered most is the one mechanism that had huge potential for what you call sub-regional cooperation. That is cooperation between Bangladesh, China, India and Myanmar. Because all these four countries, they come together at a point in our northeast. Okay? And the people in the border, they all have more in common. Even the people of the state of Bengal there have more in common with the people on the border of Burma or China than with the people in Calcutta or in any other part of the state. And it was very, very interesting, and I had gone to the northeast for a conference where this was being discussed. We had Pranab Mukherjee as foreign minister, he said in Delhi, they want peace on the periphery and progress at the center. So this is a very, very loaded thing. If I had heard it in Delhi, I might have thought differently. But when I heard it in the northeast, I said, but what? Just like Nehru said after the China, India during the war, that my heart goes out to the people of the northeast. So it looks like still that is there, that you want people on the border to maintain peace so that you can have development at the center. But what about the development of the people on the border itself? And people like Patricia Oberoi, who is a very distinguished scholar on China, and she says what she's really kind of worked up about is the way this debate over BRI has destroyed the scope for BCIM itself, which had a genuine potential for cooperation and bringing together all these four countries. I had attended one of the, not track 2, it was track 1.5 meetings on this, and one could find that all of them, they had very high representations in this. So I also felt that it was probably the best forum free of that kind of politics. Second thing which one of the China experts said recently is that now that it has come to this post-Galwan, the government of India, we don't know what kind of a government after 5 years or even for the next 5 years, but he said there is no likelihood of doing anything without electoral considerations. You know, foreign policy, especially when it comes to Pakistan and China, is very much a part of domestic politics. So it is not, no government will look at it independent of domestic politics. And so you can't expect now, once you take a hard line, now you look at it, for several years, till 2020, several months continuously, successively, wherever Mr. Modi and Xi Jinping or the foreign minister and our foreign minister or secretary, what was the mantra? Please try to recall. We will not allow differences to become disputes. You know that we can progress on other fronts, differences should not become disputes. Then overnight now, we say as long as there are this one dispute is there, we will not progress on any other thing. So this has become a kind of a non-compromising kind of thing. So I don't see in which forum there can, and in the case of India and China, I think it is only the political leadership of the two countries that Russia has tried to mediate, it has not succeeded so far. You know? So they are meeting in other places, back channel talks are going on. The ambassador coming is perhaps one outcome, but till he comes, takes office, presents, you can't be sure. That is the state of flux of India-China relationship now. And surprising thing is that, I just give a few more facts I mentioned in the book. One of the things is that, although it was Manmohan Singh in 2008 itself, he said how trade should cross $100 billion. It never went to $100 billion, I think, throughout the it has crossed $100 billion only during the worst phase of India-China relations. Post-Galwan, trade volume is growing by leaps and bounds. Okay? Of course, the deficit is in favor of China. It's not in our favor. The second thing is, there are a lot of things which are not known. Like a large number of aircraft are leased from Chinese firms. Then, but walls have come. Then, this year, I saw a report which said that they are going to issue 180,000 visas to Indians. So I was sitting with a person who imports technology and leads business delegations to China. So I told him, isn't this good for you? Although politics was... He said, no. Sorry, he said, no, it's not good for us. So I said, why do you say that 180,000, just 180,000 visas means, let's say, about 5 lakh trips? He said, but who is going to benefit from the 5 lakh trips? There is not a single flight out of India. So everybody will fly to China for business. They'll probably go to Shenzhen, so they will go to Hong Kong, they will go to Singapore. So no Indian airline, travel agency or hotel group is going to benefit from this. All the benefit will go to another country. First thing. Second thing, he observed, I don't know what Anand has to say, it is still here, he will probably clarify this to us, is that in Hong Kong, we don't need a visa for Hong Kong. But in Hong Kong, they were all asked to fill up forms. And so when they asked, they said, no, you don't need to pay, but you have to fill up these forms. So his feeling is, they are preparing the ground to raise new barriers for movement, both countries. And he says, because there is a resistance, you have to pay bribes, huge amounts at every stage. So interestingly, this businessman says the volume of business is more because a lot of money is being paid under the table also. It is not for the product. So what is apparent is not always good as it appears to be. So I find that these kind of channels are still in trouble. And if trade is good, then one has to ask why are the other spaces not opening up. So I don't see any of these forums. I think it has to be bilateral. Nothing short of that will work between India and China.
In your book, you recommended that India should take a leaf out of US book in dealing with China, in having interactions with China. So that is my last serious question to you before we move on to the gossipy parts. So
you want to?
move on to the gossipy parts.
Okay. Yeah.
So can you just expound on this?
Okay, I'll pass this one. When I say India should follow the US playbook, what I mean is, every year they have this Shangri-La conference in Singapore. And there you have a US admiral, the equivalent of our defense minister. Everybody will make noises about the South China Sea, freedom of navigation, all these things. But after the Shangri-La conference, soon after that, there is always a security and economic dialogue with China. For 3 days, the US Secretary of State and the Treasury Secretary are there. So I followed this for a few years, how there is not a whisper of any differences. They do business with great seriousness. So this is like saying, okay, Sandeep Dixit and I, we don't agree on what China should do in Taiwan, so let us discuss the rest of it. You were very violent, mine are very kind of timid. So we said, in the same way, they make this pro forma statement about the South China Sea, and they move on to doing their business. So, and then there was one instance I found that the Vietnamese Prime Minister had gone to the US, and he had said something. But when the Vietnamese Prime Minister came here, we took it on ourselves to say adverse things about China. Second thing, I don't know how many of us reflect on this. If you look at what kind of a stage New Delhi has become, they have a particular policy on Ukraine, on the war involving Ukraine and Russia, on what Israel is. But we have people of every country, inconsequential countries, countries which are smaller than Greater Noida, who are coming to Delhi and abusing your government and attacking your foreign policy. Why should Lithuania or Estonia come here and speak about New Delhi's policy? Would we be able to, who does this in Washington? Nobody is doing it there. So all these things suggest that there is no grip. Something seems to have gone out of control. They can say, of course, this is a free country, you can speak, but then even in other free countries, people are not speaking like this. And then now we'll come to whatever gossipy things.
The gossipy ones you have written about the media in China.
Yes.
And it sounds so much like the media in India. One is reminded of various TV houses or media houses. When you talk of China daily, you think of a parallel here. You think of Global Town, think of a parallel here. So just tell us a bit about the Chinese media, the state of the Chinese media, especially China Daily. That was very fascinating. How personal assistants keep a watch over you and they devote you to their editor-in-chief.
No, they do keep a watch over you, and I'm sure they keep a watch in diverse ways. Like I was staying in the Asia village, a 2-bedroom service apartment, and once in the reception of that place, I came across this woman who is learning Tamil. She can speak only Tamil and Mandarin, so she used to speak to me in Tamil. She can't speak English. And one day, out of the blue, she said, "What are you doing? Are you doing yoga or some magic movements in your room?" So you can see that there must be a camera or something like that, And I also went to a colleague's house once, and there were a lot of wires and things like that. So he said, "Oh, Shastri, you have to wait outside. I'll just put these things away, Then all those things are put away." So sometimes a lot of these things are happening about which you cannot ask questions. Then there are levels of beyond a certain wall, you don't know what is going. Like they tell me, okay, we want an editorial on what Taiwan is importing from which hand. So somebody tells, when you write, they said, "No, but we can't use this word. Can you use this word?" They may not know English, but they know what you are saying in English, whether they want it or not. So in a sense, it is like Indian media. Today we have a lot of people bringing out English newspapers, where the editor's knowledge of English itself is in serious doubt. I mean, not a big deal to know it. And I'm sure this is true of Hindi and other languages also. There are people whose language comes. But this is a remarkable thing. China has a number of English publications. These are all brought out by people who cannot write in English. And my own director and editor, when I brought out this publication called China-India Dialogue for the China International Publishing Group, she could speak in English with me. But the editorial meeting she will conduct, and she has a translator, she will speak only in Chinese. So there are many publications like this. But they are very clever. So what they will do, I will edit something and give it. Then I have to do a second reading of it. So they will send it to me. So I can't just think, okay, I have seen this, I only edited it 2 days ago. No. They have got another white man data. They won't have an Indian if it is in my case. But if a white man is doing it, they will take it to an external person who is of some other nationality. And they will deliberately introduce some mistakes in the text to check if you are going through it. So they do these things. So this is another way of making sure that you will kind of fall into these pitfalls if you don't pay attention to how they work. Second thing, China Daily is probably the best paymaster in China. They pay very well, they give you a nice flat, they look after you, very at the center of the city.
Pay you the most also.
Huh?
Pay the most also.
They used to pay the most. CCTV pays a little more than them now. But since then, pay has changed. See, 2008 was a turning point for China because of the Olympics. They trained people in English. You produced an army of English-knowing taxi drivers, or at least who could negotiate with English passengers. And the pool of English translators or interpreters is the same, whether it's for newspaper, foreign affairs, news agent. So, like it's a very small community. So if I go work in one place, there is something I have done or not done, it would be known to the other newspapers because the people are from the same community. So, the most extraordinary thing in all these papers is that we the foreigners, expats as they call us, expatriates, are paid far, far more than the Chinese. I don't know if Indians will ever accept such a situation that okay, we need certain skills or labor or practices from the Nepali or the Bangladeshi and that we will pay them more than what we pay ourselves. Of course, they call the shots. A woman who is paid 1/5 my salary is deputy managing editor, she decides what she'll do. But they have other benefits, that's a different thing. Like if she's buying a flat, she belongs to People's Daily, it's a government employee, so she's probably paid only 60%, it's not the market price for him. And food is practically cost nothing in China. And if you're eating out around people like us here, but otherwise most offices have canteens, where in those days they had to serve a basic meal means at least 3-4 meat items like for 2 yuan or less. And you could happily, and I buy the rice in the office, and the container, a cardboard container in which I bought the rice, actually cost more than 2 portions of rice. You know, so food is quite, I have to just make a little dal and for it. So all these possibilities are there for where life is easy, and good. So they pay you well. Then they started this Global Times, and Global Times, of course, they didn't have any of the infrastructure. They just started a newspaper like Fox. But all these newspapers, they have one thing in common. Like when it comes to foreign affairs, Xinhua advises the State Council of Information Officers and the on what will be covered, how it will be covered. And when it comes to foreign affairs, there is no free writing that any newspaper does. It is subject to scrutiny or it is guided out. One of these two things. There won't be any great variation. Like you will not find Hindu is saying something and only Times of India and Hindustan Times are saying the same. You will not find that kind of divergence then. But all local issues, they are very intrepid reporting. Like if it is a quack and then cheating in hospitals on medicines, doctors inflating prescriptions and then collecting money from them. All these things, they are very sharp. You know. But these issues, second thing is, if I have written something, it goes to another person who will see it. And there are this whole array of people called assistants to the editor-in-chief in China Daily. Each of them is sitting, is a lord of the he has a territory. You can't know what all territory he has. But he can see the work that everybody has done on a system. And he can change it. So why did I leave China Daily? Because one day they hadn't used something. And I used to go in the morning, 9 o'clock. Then 11:30 the lunch begins. So people will eat lunch and then sleep in the office. And it's really an amazing thing. Even somebody you appoint today, even if it's his first job, what he knows is that he can sleep after lunch. He comes with a bloody pillow to the office. You know. So, and you can't with seven. So I didn't know this. So I would sit in China Daily in the afternoon. Then only it took me a month or two to realize I can go out, meet people and come. Why? Because the editorial which I would write would be seen in the evening. And only after 6 it will go back and forth, it will be finalized. And then you have one day editor who is above the other editors during the day. He is practically the editor of the paper. Then there is one night editor. If the day editor has cleared an edit, the night editor has every right to throw it in the bin and have a fresh. That's his prerogative. And usually the editor-in-chief doesn't interfere with these things. And the editor of China Daily, it is said, he has all powers except that of issuing a visa. I mean, it's something like a vice premier. So, with the development of the English, we had a lot of these sites and all that. And Global Times, I think, was their version of Fox News. See, everybody here would know about Global Times. But how many people know about China Daily or how long it is there? It has been there from 1983 or 86, from the 80s, But it's such a totally official paper. So Global Times, you bait Hillary Clinton, you bait Google, you bait country. This newspaper is read, it is quoted. And the English Global Times doesn't sell much. It is mostly among the expat community. The Chinese don't even read it, except the Chinese who produce it. But this Global Times is a child of the original Chinese Global Times. And the Chinese Global Times, I'm told, used to sell 1.5 to 2 million copies. And they were making a profit from circulation alone. Because in 2009 in China, I don't know how many papers are selling copies like that. And that's to digital development. And that Global Times, they say, I've seen the Chinese version of it when I went to the office of the People's Daily. It was launched sometime after the meeting between Mao and Nixon. Because many of the Chinese people and all, when they came for meetings, they didn't know what was happening. So he said, we need to have a newspaper for this circle of people who come from abroad and with whom we are dealing. They should have at least a little more information than what we put out to people. Because it's okay to tell the masses, that 2 plus 2 is equal to 5. But for this group, we should have something where they will know 2 plus 2 is 4. This is that kind of principle on which the original Global Times was brought up. Then, the second thing is that when it goes out, you don't know where it has been edited, the piece. Who has seen it? And, like when the first riots were there in Xinjiang, the Noah had said, you allow foreign media. And that's why BBC went in the right. But they said, yes, but hold them to account. Hold their feet to the fire for a single false move. Anything fake. So, they do these things. But with all that, you can work there. You can find news. Like for instance, only 1 year ago, it's a very voluminous thing. This Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, they bring out an annual report. It will have a full kind of bibliography. So they will call something mass incidents. So if you read that, you can know how many mass incidents were there in the course of a whole year. So they are like, rural strife or people who gather to protest against children being forcibly taken. So you can always, and another thing which one of our own chaps who was working there, he said the source is the same for everybody working in China. It is you have to go to Xinhua site, you take it, you kind of layer by layer, you have to kind of take it apart, burrow into it, find it, put it together. How you interpret it is then people you talk to, you have to know their background. Okay, this guy was there at that meeting with Diving Go and then Genara. So you have to find these things and then you have to come to your own conclusions. But there's a lot of potential and some of our Indian correspondents have done pretty well there. It's very, very difficult for the Indian correspondent, I think, because they have an embassy which is equally sensitive. I don't think they can report whatever they like. It will not be appreciated by the Indian establishment either. So they have to deal. Whereas I don't think that kind of thing happens for most Western reporters. The government generally leave them free to report whatever they want and back them if they are in trouble. Whereas here, there's generally the expectation of a quid pro quo. And we've had ambassadors there who have not met the media at all, who declined, who tried to call an Indian journalist and tell him, okay, hey, you take this press release and you ask the others. Of course, the others said, no, we can't take it. The ambassador wants us to see the press release. They should release it to us. So these things have all happened. But you can write a lot on how these papers are won there, how they work. So there are various persons. Then the guy who was the editor of this, his name you will find on Twitter. He's one of the most insightful of the. He was the editor of the Poo Shijen. I think if anybody follows him on Twitter, you will know. So in Global Times once he said, no, we do what we want. Because they had a city pull-out where all this LGBT thing, all these things. China has a highly permissive society, which is changed under Xi Jinping, who is also called the Sanghi. Cracking down cultural nationalism. This is not Chinese tradition at all. So they were liberal in that and hard. So he said, we will report whatever we want. We are not China Day. Nobody is giving orders to us. They got to know about it. The party bosses came to the office. They called him. They made him stand on the state single and they excoriated him. He had to retract what he said. And this happened in the presence of all the staff. And 28 of us foreigners were also there. And then he had to kind of recant whatever he had done. Till then, I had read only about people being excoriated and recanting in literature about the Soviet Union. Otherwise, I have never seen it, But this was the first time I saw it.
Very fascinating, Shastri, all your recollections. But unfortunately, we are approaching the golden hour of 7 p.m.
Yes.
When the bar opens. So, I would have loved you to talk on the Indian media and how Indian media very successfully muddied Indo-China ties, which you've written about.
There is a chapter in the book for those who are interested.
Yeah, and with facts, with instances that you've given. But we'll skip that, we'll let the readers read. What I find is, what is missing in your book is sports. Sports. There are binaries in sports also.
Yes.
India wins a few medals, China wins a little too many medals.
Yes.
So why did you write on sports?
No, actually there is only one short sports report I did. It was not appreciated by the Indian establishment. There was in 2010, I think, or 12, Asia in Guangzhou. They were to have cricket there. But at the last minute, India backed out and they persuaded Pakistan also to back out. And that was because Sharad Pawar did not want, they want to keep cricket within a particular territory so that the television rights and the revenue which flows from that remains confined to this region. It does not go to Guangzhou and other places. So that was the only report and I had written about sports. So I thought it was cool. But China, this thing is, China is basically very strong where you can achieve something by sustained application, industry and imitation, replication. You just have to hammer this thing, the table will go down or you hammer it from down. So what does it take? Like Olympic events are not like tennis or badminton or cricket. You don't need intelligence at every level. You have a certain level of, endurance, physical endurance, to attain a certain level of stress and achieve it. Whether it is gymnastics, athletics, you can run by yourself and do it. In all these things, China wants to prove that it can get as many medals as the US. And this reminds me, I don't know, many of us will remember here, that in the 60s and 70s, particularly, they were all interested in how many medals a small country like Cuba gets and how many medals the US gets, And Cuba was much closer to the top than many of the bigger countries with far more resources and stadia and infrastructure and everything. But that is not the case with China. In China, there is huge stadium. All these things that are happening now in India, we see biggest stadium, highest building, longest bridge. This is all, in a sense, the signification of Indian political practice. This is everything they have to have the longest, biggest, tallest, that kind of thing. So, sports is by repetition. And they had decided in Olympics they will try to. They will tell you before itself, we practice very well because as interpreters or you can get so many medals, we have to get. They have a target. And I think this target thing is another thing. When the Chinese set out to do something, they are very, very honest. And it was very well put by the Deputy Chief of Indian Mission I met when I went in 2020. That was my last visit, just before COVID. His name is Vimal Aquino. He is now Indian ambassador to Norway. So I asked him, what about the China head? this thing to be a moderately prosperous society by 2020. Are there? May I explain to all of us? He said, see, it's not like it will not happen, it will happen. Maybe we are yet to see the result. When they decide on something, they will set up 100 institutes. Like I'm sure there must be 100 institutes or more departments for Belt and Road area. And tell these people, okay, let us look at these economies. 5 groups will sit, 5 models, 5 options. They will sit, then they will set up a task group. You choose the best, and this has to work. This is our target. So they work like that. It is no different for sports. Because it's not like a cricket match, you know. Anything can go wrong in 50 overs, 20 overs, or one test match. That is not the case here. So, wherever it requires industry application and it is a repetitive effort, I think, I may be wrong, the Chinese are very successful. But we'll have to see whether they are equally successful in tennis or cricket.
Shastri, one small question, as a foreigner or as an Indian, do you ever had a fear factor in your mind or a security issue?
I didn't have fear because you see, I had a very good friend. I had no fear at all. In fact, some of the Chinese are afraid of me. Because they would ask people to write. Then once they told me, like, all these people there, we have not sent them money, will you take the money? So I said, no, I won't take the money. How will I explain this if I've talked? Why is so much money coming into my account and go? So then they didn't pay these people. And you see, this other thing, the newspaper, if I say, what about the payment? We have sent it. That means the editorial director has sent it to the finance department. Then the finance department has to then process it. Then it will go to the account department. If account department is saying we have got it, it doesn't mean it comes to that. We have now asked the guy who will go to the bank to then go. It's a long process. So there was a very fine person here called Li Xiaojun in the Chinese embassy. I had met him before, so I met him there. And he came to meet. We used to meet for lunch. So I asked him, Li, are you allowed to meet me? Do you have to tell your boss? He said, yes, they know I meet you. I said, do you have to tell them what we discussed? He says, no. They can ask me if there is a situation. But that I was talking to some younger people and all whom I met socially, men or women. They said, no, they can call us and ask us, how long did you eat with him? Did you drink with him? Did he come to your house? But